Good evening. My name is Raymond Lane, and the title of my speech is A Necessary Evil, The Life of Admiral Hyman G. Rickover. I'd like to start with an anecdote from the memoirs of President Jimmy Carter, where he describes an interview that he received from Admiral Rickover while trying to become a member of the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. Rickover said to me, "How did you stand in your class at the Naval Academy?" I swelled my chest with pride and answered, "Sir, I stood 59th in a class of 820. I sat back to wait for congratulations, which never came. Instead of the question, "Did you do your best?" I started to say, "Yes, sir," but I remembered who this was. I finally gulped and said, "No, sir. I didn't always do my best." He looked at me for a long time, and then turned his chair around to end the interview. He asked one final question which I have never been able to forget or to answer. He said, "Why not?" Admiral Rickover demanded the best from those around him. Perfection was the standard, but excellence would be tolerated. I learned this during the 13 years I spent as a nuclear operator in the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program. Like all men of legend, Admiral Rickover came from very humble origins. He was the son of two Russian immigrants who began his formal Navy career in 1918 with an appointment to the United States Naval Academy. Admiral Rickover was so thoroughly despised by his classmates that in his graduation yearbook, his picture was placed at the back of the yearbook with a perforated page that could easily be torn out by the other midshipmen without damaging the rest of the yearbook. He went on to further his formal education by receiving a Master's of Science from the University of Chicago in 1929. Mid-career showed little promise for a career in the United States Navy. He had already been passed up for command on a submarine, and Admiral Rickover saw an opportunity for himself and for the Navy with nuclear power, and he took a post at the Manhattan Project in 1946. Admiral Rickover realized why he was there, that the science and the physics of a nuclear-powered submarine were already well enough understood, and that it was really only engineering problems that stood between us and a nuclear-powered submarine. By 1951, he received authorization from Congress to build the world's first nuclear-powered submarine, and 3 years later, the USS Nautilus was launched. But Admiral Rickover's career was not one unmarred by unorthodoxy. Admiral Rickover was known as a master of bureaucratic infighting. It was common courtesy during congressional hearings never to say anything negative about another officer or another naval program. Admiral Rickover quickly realized that congressmen would rather give money to a person than to an organization, and he would say or do whatever he had to concerning any other officers or any other programs to get the money he needed for his program. He also had quite a disdain for naval regulation. For instance, he would never sign his name to anything. The officers who work around him, instead of wearing Navy uniforms, would wear shirts and ties. In an interview with Diane Sawyer, he was once quoted as saying he liked every rule he ever agreed with. He even forbade his officers from carrying books of naval regulations into his building. During the grueling interviews he would give officer candidates for his program, he would also do very bizarre things to them. He had a chair that he had sawed 6 inches off the front legs, and he would make them sit in it while they talked to him. He said he liked it because they would have to keep their wits about them. And on one occasion, he even admitted to shutting an officer in a broom closet for 3 hours during an interview to let him think. His method was not without a madness, though. It was his intent to draw out, in a few short minutes, the potential that these men had. How would they behave under pressure? Do they take responsibility for their mistakes? And that's really what he was trying to get at. Despite his fierce defense of the Naval Nuclear Propulsion Program, it was one that he did view as a necessary evil. In an interview, also with Diane Sawyer, President Carter discussed in a conversation he had had with Admiral Rickover, in which Admiral Rickover said that he had wished man had never discovered nuclear power. And President Carter said, well, this is your entire legacy, and this is what you're going to be known for. Why would you want to give any of this up? And he said he would give it all up. He would give up every benefit of the nuclear age, whether it be power or medicine. He said that he would give all of that up if we would just not have the atomic bomb. Admiral Rickover was a complicated man with a tremendous amount of responsibility, but he always did his best, even when he didn't like his job. Nuclear power saved him from a mediocre career, and he battled from his ivory tower every rule he disagreed with, all of her program he did not truly believe in. Thank you very much.